Namaskar. In this episode of Dil Se, we'll talk about the turmoil that's taking place in international relations. And we'll ask the question, where do we stand? But before that, something interesting happened this afternoon when someone met me and said, he said, "You know the difference between India, China, and the United States of America? China is run by engineers. The United States of America is run by lawyers. And India is run by politicians. And the politicians mostly have no domain knowledge of what they're doing." That's a very sad story. Perhaps that's the reason China is growing in economic heft and political heft. America with Trump, we don't know what he's going to do next. But this much we know, that he has imposed 50% tariffs on goods that the US imports from India. Huge impact on the Indian economy. On the other hand, we have very little choices. The Americans say, and Donald Trump says, that because you import cheap Russian oil, convert it, refine it, sell it to the Europeans, earn dollars, and then go back and buy Russian oil, and in a sense weaponize Russia by attacking the Ukraine. So in a sense you are fueling the war in the Ukraine. The fact of the matter is that a lot of more gas is imported by the Europeans than us. A lot of the China imports a lot of oil, perhaps more than us. And of course, it's our position, and that's what our foreign minister has been saying, that look, at one point in time you told us we should buy oil, crude oil from the Russians, because it balanced the price of crude oil in the international market of a trade deal with the United States so soon. So we are in a bind. The MSME sector is going to be badly hurt. Also, the foreign exchange that we get into this country, 30% comes from the United States of America. So it's going to have a huge impact on our economy. On the other hand, our relationship with China is not so great. You know that after 2020 and what happened at Galwan and the occupation of the Chinese of our territory. Also, their claim that they want Arunachal Pradesh or bits of Arunachal Pradesh. Of course, we're trying very hard to now sort of suggest that we are getting closer to China. But as you know, China and Pakistan are hand in glove. The Chinese are going to weaponize them, arm them in every possible way. Recently went to Russia. We had a meeting with Putin. Putin is perhaps going to come here. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we have three extraordinary people with us today from whom we're going to try and find out what's likely to happen. Jaimini Bhagwati is here. Thank you very much. MIT PhD from Tufts, 1976 IFS, 1980 you joined the Atomic Energy, worked at the World Bank from 1991 to 2005, joined Secretary Capital Markets in the Ministry of Finance, ambassador to EU, Belgium, Luxembourg, and from 2012 to 2013 you were High Commissioner to the UK. Thank you very much for being here. Navtej, thank you very much. Old friend of mine, Navtej, 1980 IFS batch, 30 years, 8 years in the Foreign Service, ambassador to Israel, High Commissioner to UK, ambassador to the US, 14 to 16 Secretary West, spokesperson of the External Affairs Ministry from 2000, I think the longest to 2008, the longest I think any spokesperson has been there. And of course, apart from that, a great writer, fiction and non-fiction both. Book on Nanak, Second Thoughts, Indians at Herod's Gate, translated Zafarnama. Thank you very much for being here. Raja Mohan, academic. I read your pieces, and every time I read them in the Express and other places, I'm enriched. Amazing the way you write, your understanding of international affairs. You have a PhD in international relations, visiting professor in the Institute of South Asian Studies in Singapore, founding director of Carnegie India, also was with ORF and the CPR, professor at JNU, and of course a member of the National NSAP. Thank you all for being here. Jayamani, tell me what's happening.
I wish I knew, in which case I would have made a lot of money, basically investing in the relevant stocks. But jokes apart, the one destabilizing factor that we all know about is the current US president. You could say that he's a destabilizing factor, an unsettling factor. He has decided to, pardon me, take decisions without necessarily consulting people who are subject experts. So instead of talking about President Trump and his policies towards the EU or to Russia or to China and so on, let me focus for a moment about home.
Okay.
Policies towards India. I think to some extent it is his sense of grievance that we did not immediately, like Pakistan, acknowledge that he was the factor, most important factor in the cessation.
He repeats it like a gramophone record every other day. Huh?
Very true. Cessation of hostilities, mind you, it's not, we have not declared a ceasefire, it's only cessation of hostilities. So there is that grievance, and then I think he is not perhaps aware of basic economics, that if you have a balance of trade deficit is not necessarily something which is very adverse. You have perhaps a lot of foreign direct investment. You don't get all that much from India, but just two numbers which will give you a sense of the transatlantic relationship. Mm-hmm. The total amount of US FDI in nominal terms, if you just add it up over the last 30 years, is 2.7 trillion USD. The EU in the US is 2.4 trillion USD. The comparable number for China in the US is 148 billion.
I see.
So, sorry, that is from US to China. China to US is only 25 billion.
Oh.
So, you get a sense of the relationship. I deliberately gave these numbers, even though I began by talking about India, is to, we are a relatively small factor economically, and Trump, I think, in the second presidency particularly, seems to be driven by the need to improve America's finances. Whether the policies he's adopting are correct or not.
He says billions of dollars are coming in because of customs duties and all that stuff.
Your consumers will have to pay more.
And inflation will always obviously happen if the tariffs are increased, right?
Absolutely, over a period of time, that's precisely what's going to happen. So my sense is that flux and uncertainty is the order of the day. So for India, since that's where we are, that's where we live, and that's the country we love, we need to keep our head down. I was mentioning it a moment back. Tall trees are blown over when there's a storm. The grass survives. You keep your cool and manage your affairs domestically well. You referred in your introductory remarks to the MSMEs. They were hit very badly by demonetization. I'm not going to get into the pluses and minuses of it. And then somewhat imperfect implementation of GST. I'm sure everybody here knows that about 40 to 45% of our labor force is MSMEs. Yeah. Another 40 to 45%, you notice.
No, maximum exports to the US are through the MSMEs.
They produce the inputs that even what the larger corporates produce, they get inputs from MSMEs. Right. So we need to be careful about how we treat them and how we deal with them. And we know from various records that they are hurting. And while I would like to believe the government of India's figures on growth being above 6%, I'm not entirely sure. But that is, as an individual, I can have my doubts. I may be completely wrong. But definitely the benefits of growth are not percolating and are not reaching the intended beneficiaries.
Now, Tej, let me just ask you a simple question. That when you were ambassador to the US was a different kind of country. Today it's entirely different. But I want to ask a specific question. In diplomacy, is personal friendship a guide to good foreign policy?
Well, thank you very much. I think personal friendship, say at the leadership level, or personal chemistry more than friendship. Friendships, I'm not sure whether there are really friendships, but there's a personal chemistry. You like sitting with someone, you like having a chat with someone, you entertain him over dinner or lunch. I think it helps because if you can't stand the sight of the other guy, then clearly that plays into your thinking. But if that helps, having said that, I think it's only got a limited value because it's nice, a bit of a cherry on top of the cream of the cake, but there has to be the cake. So there has to be a basic relationship. There has to be a relationship that is mutually beneficial, a relationship in which both of them see some advantage of taking it forward, making it stronger. So just by personal friendship this way or that way, I don't think you can...
I think I should reformulate the question. Modi ji went there and Trump in the first presidency. Ab ki baar Trump sarkar.
Before that.
Before
I handled as ambassador the first visit, the first meeting of Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. They had not met each other earlier. And this was in June 2017.
Okay.
This was 6 months after Trump had come in. And what we had seen in those 6 months was not very comforting.
I see.
Because a lot of world leaders, a lot of allies particularly, made a beeline for not even Washington, for New York.
Okay.
Before his inauguration, when he was sitting in Trump Tower, the Japanese and others were hanging around New York trying to get a meeting because nobody quite knew what Trump was.
Right.
Nobody knew who the Secretary of State was going to be. Otherwise, for Hillary Clinton, every job had been slotted. For Trump, there was nobody. So people were winging their way in different ways, trying to get an in into the US leadership. And they didn't get a very great welcome.
I see.
He made very, very offhand remarks about the Chinese, about the Japanese, about the Koreans. Angela Merkel had a terrible visit.
Yes.
Theresa May had a frozen visit. So, frankly, we were not very keen that the Prime Minister should go in very early.
Oh, really?
And he didn't. We waited six months until we had a feel for the White House.
Right.
Because the State Department was virtually defunct. There was a Secretary of State, but I remember walking those corridors and my steps would resound because it was empty.
Oh, I see.
The rooms were not staffed.
I see.
So you couldn't, the protocol didn't know anything. They couldn't figure out a prime ministerial program. So you had to deal only with the White House. And it took us a while, but we managed. And that first day, the meeting went very, very well on a personal level.
I see.
Because he had a certain mutual, there was a certain, at least Trump had a very good impression of the Prime Minister. They met immediately and they spent almost the entire day in the White House.
Oh, that's great.
Over lunch, over one-on-one meeting, a press conference in which Trump stayed on message, surprisingly. And so for an ambassador, it was a great relief. At the end of the day, I could, open my collar button and say, ho gaya. But I think there were other visits, which you mentioned.
Yes.
And that was after I had left, but they had the big rallies and all that. The difference is that, there was a time when Trump was a little uncertain. He didn't have his agenda farmed out. He didn't have enough of the loyalists around him. And in these 4 years that he was out, he feels highly victimized by the system.
Right.
He's been hauled through courts and all sorts of things have happened. So this time, he has picked people only on the basis of loyalty, not competence. So nobody is questioning him. And he's running riot. So whatever restraint there was on him, whatever advice he could take, today it is, gets up in the morning, today I want to drive on the left-hand side of the road, tomorrow I'll drive on the right side of the road. So I think our relationship has also got caught to a large extent in, as Germany mentioned, there's a personal peak.
Why is that?
Well, I think I think, frankly, one can only
Is it
guess.
because of the proximity?
I think
with
one is the trade deal wasn't going the way he wanted.
Right.
B, this Operation Sindoor didn't get the credit. 3, the Pakistanis offered him the Nobel Prize or offered a recommendation for the Nobel Prize. And 4, frankly, he doesn't care about policy. So, the basic underpinning from the American point of view, the importance of India as a strategic partner was a kind of tactical, if not strategic, convergence on China. Ever since Bush II, Condi rise, etc. China's rise is inevitable. India is a good partner to have.
Why has the bonhomie been lost then between Trump and Modi ji?
I don't think, as I think
There was no bonhomie.
I think we overestimate
Okay.
this thing, the fundamental presumption which came in at the beginning of Trump 2, that since we handled Trump 1, we are comfortable with Trump 2. I think that presumption was misplaced.
Oh, I see. So therefore, there was an error of judgment in a sense. Yeah, possibly. Raja, you were sort of, you really analyzed this from an international standpoint, and you look at the future. Where do you think this is going to go?
I think when we're looking at Trump, I think we got to separate his personal unpredictability, vindictiveness to his opponents, his caprice, his megalomania. All these are given. But I think that should not come in the way of seeing what he's trying to do in the US and to the world is really a revolution, or a counter-revolution, if you like. That the assumptions of how the world ought to run or is running for the last 80 years, he's going with a pickaxe at the fundamentals of the international system. So take three broad areas where he has made the big change. One, trade. The assumption of GATT, WTO system of rules will govern global trade. He's saying, no, I'm going to negotiate bilateral deals.
Yeah.
Second, US was a great country for immigration, that you outsourced your manufacturing, you insourced labor. He says that must stop. You need to have reshoring of production. You need to have restoration of manufacturing jobs and largely restore, shall we say, make America white again in a fundamental sense.
Right.
And you can feel that on the ground, that this idea that America was a land of immigrants, that is true historically, but I think the expansive immigration under the Democrats and the opening up of borders today, there's a backlash. And he's actually the movement that supports him. Right. Both is anti-globalization as well as anti-immigration. So in a way, it's not just his personal conviction, that actually his mass base today wants action on those, and he's taking those. The two other areas, I think, on technology, for example. If you see the previous years, the Biden administration was trying to restrain technology, AI and other technologies. He's in full partnership with the Silicon Valley capitalists, and he's saying completely unleash the Silicon Valley capital, some of the new initiatives taken on artificial intelligence, on cryptocurrencies. He's basically saying, guys, go ahead and dominate the world. In fact, his statement last month, US is in an AI race, and we're going to win it. So I think this unfolding of a new technological capitalism in the US with full support of Washington, that's a new force. Where did we go wrong? My sense is we had, I think, given the personal relationship between the PM and the president, which was kind of seemingly reinforced in the February 13th summit.
Yes.
I think since probably we underestimated this intensity of the positions on trade. How we negotiated that agreement, I mean, we don't have to get into the details, but their expectation and our willingness, there was a complete mismatch. And I think that is broken down.
But there's another aspect to it I want your response to it. See, from Trump's point of view, he said America has been done in over the years.
Yeah.
You know, after the Second World War, there was the Marshall Plan.
Yeah.
We tried to sort of empower the European economies, which were destroyed. And we've been, spending money on their defense. Why should we have to give so much to the world? And then we are allowing all the imports from the Europeans, from the Asians to come in, and we're losing out. So in that sense, he says, look, America has been done in. America wants to restore that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I think is interesting. What he did a little bit of this in the first term. It's interesting that the Biden administration did not reverse the tariffs on China.
Right.
In fact, the notion, the Biden administration's policy or foreign policy for the middle class was largely playing on Trump's terrain, which is, look, the US has lost out on a manufacturing game. China is rising. Therefore, we need to do something to restore American technological leadership, manufacturing capabilities, and to be able to dominate the international system. And I think we've only seen the trade game so far. I mean, he's also going to go at the financial system.
Of course.
Internationally, often his Secretary of Besant has already talked about changing the rules of the finance, of restoring the dollar's dominance. And our loose talk on de-dollarization, of course, got their attention.
Yeah, we got into trouble with that.
Basically, I mean, he might offer us another 25% if we keep talking about that, but I think we are not interested in de-dollarization. But I think the sense that...
But BRICS would be interested.
Yeah, British, I think its summit is, we are hosting it, I think, later in the year. But before that, we have the SCO. But I think this easy sense of America is declining and we can build a coalition against it and benefit from it, that I think we need to re-examine that. This notion, actually what we're seeing is assertion of American power. And the fact that he was trashing the WTO system, but people lined up in front of the White House to negotiate bilateral. Nobody went to WTO.
All the Europeans?
Yeah, and no one, not even the China. Nobody went to the WTO and said, guys, where is the multilateral system? But I think that is the power. What Trump has said, we import from everyone, therefore I have the leverage against everyone. True. And he said, okay, everything starts afresh, let's do new deals. I think on the Pakistan question, I think these two diplomats sitting here, but I think the wordplay, we got lost on the wordplay. You see, if you look at every major crisis between India and Pakistan, 87 brass tacks, 90 there was a crisis. Then you had 98, 99 Kargil. You had the 2001, 2002 Op Parakram. Then you had the 2008 attack on Mumbai. Then you had Pulwama. Then you had Pahalgam. All of these crises, the Americans were the first responders, diplomatically. Every time the Americans stepped in. So this notion that Americans have nothing to do with this, which we tell ourselves, I mean, that's not accurate.
Interesting.
I think we mentioned it on your show in May.
Yes.
So what the problem was this man, President Trump, even before you announced that we're stopping, he says, I brokered it. Now, the problem is with the word brokered, you didn't deny his involvement. After all, you said Rubio called twice, J.D. Vance called once. So he was dramatically overstating American role, and it was not suitable for our politics.
For a domestic audience.
Yeah, exactly. And then you were underplaying his role, and you got stuck. And this man's ego is no bounds, Trump's ego. So I think that's where we got on the wrong side. If we had played it, look, I remember the same thing happened in Kargil time. In fact, Nawaz Sharif had to go to Washington on a July 4th weekend.
July 4th.
Yeah.
So what we said at that time, and Mr. Vajpayee's answer was, look, thank you for facilitation. This is not mediation, this is facilitation. But I think, unfortunately, in the heat of the moment, we how that got played. And other people used to write books later and say, I did it. Pompeo, 2019 crisis. In his book, he said, look, I had to make a lot of phone calls to avoid a nuclear war. But this man, even before you said it, he's taken credit. And I think that created a huge political problem for Delhi.
But fine, I think Trump, we now know that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But what about the Chinese?
Before I get to the Chinese, in a moment, the SCO summit will take place at the end of this month.
Yeah.
But, one needs to look at it in a historical context. US is not in some kind of a terminal decline. Others have grown. US GDP as a percentage of global GDP after the Second World War was 50%. Even today, it's roughly 25, 26, depending upon whether you count it in US dollar terms or purchasing power parity terms, it'll be less than purchasing power parity terms. So Trump's rise and ability to win even the popular vote, of course, he had a relatively weak opposition in Kamala Harris, is, as Raja has pointed out, there is a racist angle to it. People are uncomfortable. And his support base is not Krugman and people like that in the Ivy League universities. So his support base is people who are mechanics, who are plumbers, who are this or that.
See what he's doing to Harvard. He's saying, I'm going to...
So there is a question of what his popular base is.
Yeah.
Now, let's come to India and where we are and how we deal with all this. I think your question was, what now?
What now? Because, we don't know, we're not going to get much from Trump. I think in Quad also, we don't have much of a role to play. And then the Chinese, we are dependent on the Chinese economy big time. And our deficit with China is about $100 billion.
A year.
A year.
In trade,
In
yes.
trade. So what are our possibilities of maneuverability in this situation?
In anything in life, there are short-term, medium-term, long-term.
So what's the
steps.
short, what's the medium, what's the long?
The immediate short term is to be very careful about our foreign exchange reserves. We don't want a 1991 situation, which will not happen given the fact that we continue to get a sizable amount every year as NRI remittances, and our reserves are around about 600 billion now, give or take.
Remittances from, as I said, 30% from the US alone.
Absolutely. But as of now, I'm not aware of anything except a stray comment that his administration might impose a certain surcharge as you send. I'm not sure that will stand scrutiny in a court of law. After all, you've earned the money, you've paid the taxes in the US, you can remit, it's a convertible currency on the capital account, you can remit money anywhere. We call it remittances from NRIs, many of them must be US citizens who are sending money to parents, etc. So I would say in the short term, we kind of hunker down. We look at the most vulnerable part of our economy is the fact that our capital account is only partially convertible, and we need to be clear that we never get anywhere near a balance of payments crisis. We can weather all other crises, including the rampant unemployment, etc., etc., etc. So having said that's number one. So we look at where does our foreign exchange come from, what are the possible, should we say, risks involved in that, and keep relatively quiet on coming up with an alternative currency, whether it was mentioned first in the BRICS setting or wherever it is. Because you don't want to be knocked out of the SWIFT system like the Russians have been, because that creates all kinds of difficulties on a day-to-day basis for exporters and so on.
Our domestic demand base is very robust, so at least that'll keep the economy going.
Yes, within India is very robust from a very small group of people.
Whatever it is, but it is robust.
Relatively robust. And as I said earlier, whether it is 6.3, 6.5, it won't be very much below 6%, our rate of economic growth. So that is, however, all in rupees. So therefore, my initial comments were, be careful on your external balances and ensure that that is not jeopardized in any big way. Having said that, to take a step forward, on the economic and diplomatic front, my sense is that this too shall pass. Mr. Trump will realize very soon, as he has in the Alaska summit with the Russians, that he can't browbeat people. He could not browbeat Putin. We don't quite know what happened. Nothing has been released.
There may be a silver lining there, because if he has cozier relations with Russia, the 25% penalty may go.
It is absurd, as been pointed out by the Indian government and by others, that China buys much more oil from Russia. Of course, they don't export because they consume all of it themselves. So we also have exported, and one particular company, the name starts with an R, and we will not go further than that.
But you see, the American administration have said that, look, at one point, the import from of Russian oil was 1%. It's gone up to 42%. And ultimately, you're selling to the consumer at a higher price, and all the money is being taken away by the big companies. Who you're benefiting? And these are the big companies, ultimately, who do a lot of trade.
Yes and no. When you say that only the company is benefiting, the government is pocketing more.
Of course.
Because our bulk of the oil that is sold, oil, petrol, diesel, whatever in India, is through Indian oil public sector undertakings. So the PSUs are being able to get oil at a lower price, but since these are government regulated prices at which we get petrol, So the PSUs have made money,
Yes.
which is good or bad depending upon what government does with that PSU profit. If
They
you
contribute to the government, you know that.
No, that is a separate issue. I'm just saying on the balance sheet, if you have more
Yeah,
profits, then the Ministry of Petroleum will be in a position to recommend to the cabinet, what do we do with these profits? The company needs to expand oil exploration. We haven't done much of that. We should have done that a long time back. But having said that, so to that extent, that money is in the country. And if one large company has exported, they too will have to pay taxes on their profits.
Of course, there's no
So
doubt.
to that extent, it is not such a kind of disaster for us. Yes, in terms of people talking about it in the US or Europe, I remember the EU person, the top person talking about it and complaining, and then we pointed out that the EU is buying more oil from Russia than we are in an afternoon than we are doing in a month. So I would not, basic thing is don't push the P button.
Lie low is what you say.
Yeah, panic button should be avoided.
But I wanted to shift this discussion to the Chinese and what are our options there?
I think, see, China, let me come at it from two sides. One is the US-China. So I think US-China has always been a deal in the making. So Trump, right from beginning of Trump 2.0, has seen China as a major challenge, adversary, and yet he's been wanting to make a deal with them. So the minute he finds a deal, he'll make it. He tried twice in the first term. It didn't work out the way he wanted, right? From Mar-a-Lago and the second deal, it didn't work out. This time, he's still trying. That's why if you notice, while we are getting 25% more on 27th August, they got a 90-day reprieve.
That's right.
And they import $62 billion worth of oil as against our 35 or 40 billion. So Peter Navarro and others are saying, but they haven't increased it. India has increased it. Now, which is a stupid
They have
argument.
decreased it, in fact.
Yeah. So so I think China is a deal in the making. So we have to be careful with that. Now, as long as there was no deal and there was a strategic convergence between India and the US on China, it was good to play along. So in a way, I think there has been this debate within India that do we sort of put up all of the military strategic sort of option that until China moves away, etc., we are not doing. On the other hand, the whole trade, commerce, investment lobby in India has been shouting for the last 2 years that no, we need China, we open up visas, this, that, tunnel boring machinery,
Nathula,
etc.
no.
Yeah, so now, more than Nathula, I think there are 2 or 3 areas on which this engagement, I don't think if the SCO visit will work it out or the normal, it will happen in due time. One is rare earths.
Yes, that's very important.
So we need them. Our EV sector is languishing,
Yes.
particularly the two-wheeler EVs. You know, the TVS and Heroes and all that. They are running into a huge problem because the rare earth magnets have stopped coming.
Now the urea, that's the other.
Urea is the second thing. And even the most specialized fertilizers, which are for horticulture, that we're not even talking about. I think in these last talks, urea got
Any
mentioned.
movement in these talks? Because
I believe-
I think the foreign minister Wengi came here.
I believe these were all mentioned,
I see.
but nothing has yet come.
I see.
So whether it's urea or rare earths, no containers or permits have actually been issued, but there is some hope on these things.
Okay.
And the third thing is pharma.
Oh, that's most important.
You know, our pharma to US is still exempt.
Yes.
How long it is exempt, we don't know. He's threatening 250% on pharma. Much of our APIs
Come from there.
are coming from China. We are doing the formulation.
Right.
So I think there are these things which have to be kept in mind without giving up our border issues. So I think what we did for 30 years, we have to get back to that. It's not going to be easy. We have to get back to that you manage the border and you carry on. So this, in a way, this is an opening.
But in a sense, you're telling me that there is very little space that we have, quite frankly, from what you tell me. How do we
It's worse,
negotiate?
actually, we keep talking about strategic autonomy, strategic autonomy. Your industry is hopelessly tied to Chinese inputs.
Exactly, exactly.
See, what is
Your
reminding
electronics, everything.
You want to do iPhone 17? Okay, I'll pull the Foxconn engineers. You want to build road in Himalayas? I'll take away the boring machines. You want to make pharma? I got the control.
Right.
So I think, see, for 30 years, what has happened is we've lost ground on manufacturing. And China has become today almost 35% of the world's manufacturing takes place in China. And we're completely dependent on it.
That's true.
And talk about whether the UPI government's national manufacturing mission or these guys make in India policy, it's not yet borne fruit. In fact, manufacturing as a percentage is going down. Because
I
service
don't think
sector is going.
manufacturing will ever come back to India. This is my own feeling.
Yeah. So I think unless we find a way to end these vulnerabilities, we keep talking about Atmanirbhar, but I think unless you have clear policies, more reform at home that facilitates Indian industry to become a competitive one, till that time, you're stuck with the
The
Chinese.
industry is all moving out. You have the PMLA. Who is going to invest in India?
I didn't quite answer your question on the China aspect. But between 2000 and 2005, we were completely self-sufficient in APIs, these
That's
active
true,
pharmaceutical ingredients.
dumping.
That's right.
It is not a very difficult, it's not very high tech because it is cheaper to import from China.
That's correct.
So I think we need to struggle. I completely dismiss any industry or any commercial house's argument that we'll be in trouble. Let everybody be in trouble, but you learn through trouble to be somewhat more self-sufficient where manufacturing is concerned. This government or even the previous government for the last 25 years, we have not given it the importance, and Raja just mentioned the number. As far as I know today, manufacturing has shrunk to 12% of
That's
GDP.
correct, that's correct.
I mean, they keep, in government handouts, they keep talking about 15, 16%. That is incorrect. So why have we allowed our corporate houses to ignore manufacturing? I say, why have we allowed? Because they will say, we're a private sector corporate, we'll do what we want. But you sit down with them, these somewhat, if I may submit,
But
talk houses with...
You cannot have the kind of policies China has for manufacturing. You just don't have the wherewithal to do that. I mean, that's a different kind of political setup where they can force industry to do A, B, or C. We can't do that in a democratic setup.
You make it economically worthwhile for them to do that. So instead...
You suspect them all the time.
Yeah, that's wrong.
How do you, unless you free up the economy from within, free up. I mean, free up.
I think that is the point.
That's
I think
the point.
It's really not a diplomatic
Exactly.
problem.
Your point
It
is
a
exactly right.
Economic problem.
It's an economic problem.
Yes, absolutely. It's not a political or a diplomatic problem.
Exactly. So on the one time when you talk about, Atmanirbhar Bharat, but you don't give the economy and the industry the wherewithal to do what they want to do.
So there's no diplomatic solution to your economic problems.
No, there's no political solution to your economic problems either.
Also, yeah. Well, by diplomatic, I was being diplomatic.
Diplomacy helps you buy time. So until you get your house in order.
But I think this way the Trump tidal wave has now, as I said, crisis is too good to waste. So if we take this seriously and say, look, on the manufacturing side, on the agriculture, I think
absolutely.
this idea our agriculture will remain constant on the model we built in the 1960s. When technology is changing, agriculture, rest of the world is changing. Then again, I think to simply say we have red lines, all countries have red lines. But the thing is, if you don't modernize internally, your agriculture, your industry, your R&D,
Your R&D, the main thing is R&D.
But before you come, that's nice in an ideal world. But what happens is everything gets caught in domestic politics.
Yes.
There's a next election and next election and
Yes,
next.
that's
Who's going to touch agriculture?
That's right.
Well,
I mean, look at the time we are wasting. Not that this is a subject we are talking about, but look at the time we are wasting on this special, the intensive revision in Bihar. Our national narrative has nothing to do with economic growth in this country. It's something to do with how we're going to fix the voters list to win the next election.
without any suggestion that I'm being too smart by half, Operation Sindoor was announced from Patna in English. And I'll let the viewers decide why it was done. But coming back to this thing about what we have to do, Raja mentioned you we all remember the farmers' agitation. Getting in and out of Delhi, depending on which side you were coming, became difficult. Why was it impossible? I don't want to get into the details of those 3 pieces of legislation which were passed by Parliament. I think 2 were reasonable pieces of legislation and they could have been modified. You needed to sit down. If you don't sit down with people and figure out a way, what is the solution, then we will continue to say.
I'm sorry, Jamini. My worry is that if you look at the growth of the Indian economy and its direction, you are allowing the 3 or 4 industrial houses to capture every sector of this economy. You know, you're not going to get any kind of Atmanirbharta from there. No. So therefore, you have to free up at the bottom, at the MSME level, right? There, you're hurting them. They're closing down at the moment as I talk.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's what's happening. So basically, what we need an active economic policy which caters to growth. If you have economic heft, economic might, you will have political heft and political might.
Exactly.
You will have diplomatic heft and diplomatic might.
I think what you need is a pro-market,
Yes.
not pro-business.
Yes, pro-market.
Pro-growth.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Because look at our relationship with our neighbors, almost zilch, right? We can't really deal with Pakistan in the manner we used to deal with in 1971, right? We can't deal with them because the Chinese are there now. We have very little negotiating space with the Chinese. So, and our relationship with the US are strained. So, and with Russia, sure, we're wanting to, but our dependence on the Russian economy is also limited.
So actually, we export barely $5 billion to them.
Exactly.
Now
There's
oil
virtually no
surge
trade.
is taking.
There's virtually no
Virtually
trade.
no trade, and
It's
whatever
only the
it is,
defense.
is oil.
Yes, oil and defense. That's it.
Yeah, but I think that's...
This is the problem.
You put your finger on it, defense.
Yes.
So where are we on defense production? If you look at it, we talked about the economy. There too, we are lagging and we don't want to get into Rafale aircraft, which aircraft was given to us.
Reform, I think, the procurement reform, getting the
I mean,
private
some
sector
very
in.
systemic reforms where you need to be a little more open. You need to, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you need to pay DRDO scientists not by A, B, C, D, but
Yes.
who's good. Pay them $10,000 per annum, per month.
No,
pardon me.
and invest in the private sector for R&D.
Exactly.
That's what you
Exactly.
need to do. But you don't do that.
So-
Because the moment you do that, somebody will file a petition saying that they are favoring this fellow, favoring that fellow. Then there'll be a public interest litigation. So all that must stop.
That goes back to your core competence.
No,
What our
I'm
judges
deeply
do.
disappointed with the judiciary as well.
Absolutely. I
You
mean,
see, I'm deeply, deeply disappointed.
They just sit
Because the
on
problem
things.
of the matter is they don't protect the ordinary citizen of this country, right? They say go to the High Court. The trial court doesn't grant bail. Chief ministers are inside for years. Ministers are inside for years, right? They try and implicate chief ministers and existing ministers. Now they want to have a law, criminal laws. They are now saying that if a minister or a chief minister is in prison, is in custody for 30 days, on the 31st day he must resign. Now, in which country will growth ever take place if these are the kind of laws in our country? This is the problem. This is the real problem. And the courts are not doing anything about it.
Unfortunately, that is the hard truth.
You know, free up agriculture. Invest in the private sector in R&D, right? Allow industry to function in a market-oriented economy, not crony capitalism, as you are doing. One person is buying this, the other person is buying that. I mean, what's the national assets?
Because I think on what you said about R&D, because again, I think we're not paying enough attention to the dramatic changes in technology.
Yes.
I mentioned at the beginning that what Trump is doing.
Where are we in
On
AI?
yeah.
Where are we in AI?
You might find that in California, some of the top guys who are doing some of the research are people of Indian origin and maybe first generation.
No,
So
we're helping the US build it. But I'm saying internally, if you don't...
You need to pay people more. Government can afford to pay people more in select areas, assuming that you choose people on a competitive, open, transparent basis. So you're not paying high amounts to people who are really not that good.
Get technocrats into the political system.
But that's what the Chinese have done.
It's
Basically,
very,
all
very
engineers.
important. And I started with that. most of these people have no idea of the ministry that they're handling. I'm sorry to say, I don't want to criticize anybody. The reality is, what does a politician know about a ministry that he's handling? Right? He has no knowledge. He'll just do what the bureaucrat asks him to do. This is the reality.
Most of the ministers are ex-bureaucrats now.
I think what Raj mentioned, I want to use that to bring you back to Trump.
Okay.
Raj mentioned that Indian Americans are helping build the US. They're not coming back.
True.
And this is what I've been wondering. I've been waiting for these last few weeks when India-US relationship has been going from here to here and going in doldrums. Where are the famous Indian Americans?
True.
But they're Americans, in the end.
They're Americans.
I think we often
you're absolutely right, and this is something which I share your point of view, and I've been saying this, that do not build up this chimera that we have a huge and influential Indian American lobby. They are Americans. For me, honestly, the day you change your passport, you're not an Indian.
You're right.
You're not an Indian.
You're right.
And we should not have an unusual expectation, an undue expectation, because we are actually putting those people in a difficult spot.
We were using those very people for the kind of things that we're doing with Trump.
We are putting those people in a difficult spot. He spent his 35 years trying to be American, and then you go and say, no, but you're Indian. So, so let's not have false hopes. That is another presumption. When you checked it, it was false. And we've checked it now. Otherwise, the number of Indian Americans in the Trump administration?
Any number. Huge.
So why are they not influencing policy?
They can't.
They are influencing policy in favor of the United States.
They can't. So let's take it that they can't. Let's not build up this thing.
There's a diaspora, which is
Time permitting, you brought up the issue of appointments. We have ambassador designate to India, Sergio Korkovsky, who was born in Tashkent.
That's right.
He's 38 years old. He's not just ambassador to India. Of course, he needs Senate ratification approval.
Envoy.
He is also the special envoy for South Asia and Central Asia. I'm reminded of a visit of Richard Bauscher. In those days, I happened to be responsible for Central Asia, etc., Russia, and so on. He came and met me, and he was the Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia, and he suggested that we import electricity from these huge hydroelectric projects that the US will set up in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan because they have a lot of hydro potential. So my response to him was, which is there in WikiLeaks, if you so wish to look at, my response to him was, you provide the electricity to us at our borders. I have no clearance from anyone. Any amount. You give us 100 gigawatt, we'll accept it. So he also smiled. He knew that, I said those difficult terrains and those difficult
terrorists
places, how do you get it?
Like the pipeline.
So now this appointment, we can't just ignore this. I don't know. One way to do it is to go slow on the
I just read a comment.
But I don't think we should look. How can we say we are the fourth largest economy? And are we going to be bullied by an ambassador? So I don't think we should hype up every little thing into a.
Bullied, but
nobody is going to bully us. Look,
and he's not going to deliver merely because he's close to Trump, quite frankly.
No, he can't.
In fact, I read a comment the other day. He said we had people like Galbraith who were here, who had the stature to actually change policy. But these people don't have that.
No, you see, he evidently, according to Steve Bannon, he is the only man who has walk-in privileges on Trump. I don't know if it's right or wrong.
Access is good.
So access is always useful,
Yeah.
but it's good to have the ear of the president, but it depends on what the message is.
That's true.
Sometimes I'd rather he didn't have the ear if he's going to give the wrong message.
I think so. I think it brings us back to the main point. What we started with. If you see Trump's tweet on this appointment, he says, my agenda with A in capital. What is the agenda? One is trade. I think there's no secret that is number one agenda. I think we have to find creative solutions to get to some kind of a settlement. After all, US is our largest trading partner.
Yes.
And let's also be clear, for all the criticism of Trump, we're not a good trade negotiator. No. We're not nice to our neighbors. We're not nice to anyone in the world. Right. And when Trump says tariff king, you ask any one of our neighbors. how difficult they find to export to the Indian market. So I think we need to take a fresh look at our own trade policy. How do we reform the trade policy so that you integrate with the world more efficiently, rather than this, like the Prime Minister says, I mean, I want to export more, but don't buy foreign goods. I mean,
Yes,
how
he
is
says
it going
that.
to
I was
how is it going to
surprised.
work?
Exactly.
So I think we need a fundamental rethink on our trade policy.
Okay, now let's just close this discussion by asking one last question. Fine, we talked about the US, we talked about China, we talked about our neighbors. What about Europe? Do you have any possibility of having a deal with them?
I think these knows more about
Well,
trade.
I have served 3 years in Brussels
Yes,
talking
yes, Luxembourg and
to
Brussels,
the
yes.
EU officials. We had a recent seminar here between Bruegel and IIC, and it was a good seminar, good exchange of views. The problem is that the European Union needs the approval of all the European governments.
Yes.
Okay, maybe they can manage that. But they have different views, and plus they have to get the approval of the European Parliament, where there are a lot of people who are sharks as far as, or
Can we have a trade deal with them which is beneficial?
not in the immediate
Not in
term,
the
is my sense. It's going to take time. And they also have this carbon border adjustment thing, which mechanism, CABM, I think it's called.
But they say it's actually never been as fast as it is today. We've done about 7-8 chapters. There were still 70,
We've been
50.
working on it for the last 17, 18 years.
But they say in the last 1 year there's been progress.
It's moved, and I think the India-UK deal has helped.
That has made them focused a little more, that if we can we do something which is
If I
India,
got the
UK
US
plus.
deal, it would have probably even
Yeah.
The only difference is that UK is one country, EU is many countries,
That's
and
true.
each country has the right. Although trade
There's
has,
tension between them and China too. So what I'm saying, maybe we have some maneuverability there, that's all.
if
I think
you,
it again takes you back to, are you prepared to do trade reforms?
Yeah.
That I think is the key which will open up for the space.
absolutely, if you're prepared to be more open and take some risk, you're constantly want to, as I don't want to say it, protect some people.
You
here.
cannot climb
You cannot
this-
keep
You
protecting and
cannot
also
climb the Everest unless you take the risk.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
And we want India to be there, right there.
We have to, because, I mean, let's face it, last 2 or 3 years, we have changed our attitude towards FTAs.
Yes, of course.
So, but still there's a long way to go. So even the old FTAs that we have with Japan, with ASEAN, etc., they need to be re-energized. So there's a long
Let's
way
do
to
that.
go.
Let's do that, and let's free up the Indian economy.
Absolutely, that's the only way. I
That's
think
the only way.
is what
Maybe.
I think the main thing. The world is changing very fast. The question is how quickly are we willing to change our domestic situation? And if we don't do that, we're going to fall further behind.
Right. And forget about politics for the moment.
Yeah.
Let's concentrate on the economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Thanks.